Hey guys, what's up? This is Teddy Macedo, aka Rimshot speaking. Today I'm finally going to be doing whatever it is the moment that all of you have been kindly waiting for. Well, is it this time? Well, let's just say this time I just feel like, oh yes, okay. Sorry about that. Anyways, my computer is up. Anyways, as I was saying, today I'm finally gonna do the moment I'm sure all of you guys throughout the whole time it's gonna press me both past and present have all been waiting for. As you may ask, well, from my understanding, I noticed a lot of people out there throughout the whole time it's gonna press me really did not appreciate when I called Morgan Ledger pedophile. Which I will honestly say, funny enough, yes, all of you guys have heard that right. I've yet to apologize just now, so on with the apology. To all those who really did not like when I called Morgan, to all those that the whole time just kind of friends can be watching this, both past and present, as well as anyone who was ever friends with Morgan and Jaime too watching this as well. I'm really sorry about calling Morgan Ledger a pedophile. Believe me when I say this, looking back at that moment as last summer kicked in, I now know it was wrong for me to do such things. And yeah, when understanding the reality of what a pedophile means, I guess I may have misworded for something else. It's not what I meant to say about Morgan for when you're a pedophile. You're just doing under restrictions, I will say. I never would ever consider believing about Morgan. Yeah, however, the fact that, well, it may have been wrong for me to call Morgan Ledger a pedophile of all things, please be understanding about me. That means you, Jaime, in case if you're watching this. That the fact that as much as it is wrong for me to call Morgan a pedophile, it still doesn't change my mind from feeling the way Morgan thought about my former editor, Richard Gardner, who just comes across as flat out weird, flat out creepy, flat out status, flat out heterophobic, and did some book burning here and there, and discriminated me for having autism, and discriminated me for being a New Yorker, and discriminated me for having love for playing video games, including Super Smash Brothers, and discriminated me for being left-handed, as well as, likewise, proved to me that Morgan Ledger, from my understanding, not only has little to no respect for people with disabilities, but also he carries little to no respect for people on privacy, and he has little to no respect for people with diabetes. All of which are just sad for me to say, about Morgan, because I'm going to be honest here. I still enjoy watching his videos, as well as likewise Jaime, and I especially absolutely do love the latest episode of From Pages to Pictures. In fact, I feel like the Willy Wonka episode of From Pages to Pictures is just scrimbillious, but that's just me. But yeah, And I'm sure some folks throughout the whole time just couldn't freshman or those who know I'm talking about are probably going to be asking me, what is so things like creepy, status, heterophobic, all that kind of stuff about what Morgan has said about each Gordon? Well, with the case for when you hear me say that Morgan Ledger's just guilty of being creepy, well, I will say this, that Morgan Ledger, from my understanding, did once say that going by nickname is not good enough, which, let's be honest here, when you hear Morgan say such things about why he hates his Guardian, it's just flat out creepy, Because, if your problem with his Guardian I mean, when it comes to Zuchi Guardian, I get that he may have done a lot of things we all don't like. And he made a lot of mistakes. Although, did things I'm sure we can all agree should not have done. While I can understand you may not like when you have him do things that call people like me out as gay, because, let's be honest here, a lot of people he calls out to be gay are actually not gay, so you guys can see why I can be guilty of calling his guardian as a major sex offender in the past, as well as when he does such unprofessional crap like going all liable on some form of colleagues as bosses he had in the past as a filmmaker. However, if your problem with his guardian would be the fact that he always goes by the name and never uses his real name, you're just plain creepy right here. Because, let's be honest here, when it comes to the fact that his guardian would go by nickname, you are going to have to understand for yourself, even I myself had to learn the hard way, would be that, well, when it comes to the fact that he got his guardian, who would always go by nickname of all things, it is nothing more than a choice he made on his own, whether we all like it for ourselves or not. So if you're curious on what his guardian name be, leave me and his guardian alone, please, for you're just plain creepy. Which leads me into bringing this up. When it comes to the time when I would say that he would be guilty of being things like status and heterophobic, as well as discriminating me for such things like being a New Yorker, being left-handed, being a major Smash fanboy, as well as likewise being straight, regardless of what I get to do with my creative life, as well as likewise continuously work on projects for the sake of nostalgia. That's where you can tell it all could have been factors on how people like Morgan, for example, would think I'm a Zuchi Guardian. Well, yeah, you can say for a fact that Zuchi Guardian and I both have had things in common all you want. Like, some things that we both do indeed have in common would be, of course, we're both lifelong New Yorkers, we're both lifelong straights. We both love to take paratransit to places. We both love to play a lot of video games, including Super Smash Bros. This can explain of how that when, if you ever ask me how I first officially met a Zuchi Guardian, it would be at this local plane trade in Yonkers that used to be a thing. As well as, likewise, we both love Star Wars, including having to enjoy the prequels. And we both hated The Last Jedi. We both loved Rogue One. And we're both guilty of continually working on projects that can be done for the sake of nostalgia. However, all those facts about me and his Guardian still don't change the fact that I'm still not his Guardian either way. In fact, I'm not even gonna lie when I say this, that there are so many different things of how I'm not his Guardian. Like, for example, one of those many things that make me his Guardian different people would include the fact that, well, would obviously include the fact that, well, how we can both be with anime. I'm sure all of you who know me personally very well know how much I not only loved anime, but also, as all of you guys can clearly see for yourselves, when anime gets to receive anything from me when he did What's in the Box, That's where all of you guys can honestly tell of how respectful I can be with him, even though there may be certain things he may review I may not agree with him on. What am I going to do about that? But still, that still doesn't stop me from loving him and supporting him to death. Even my dad can tell you that for a fact about me. As well as a number of social workers I've had during my residential days, I will honestly say. However, with the case of how a Zuchi Guardian can deal with anime, on the other hand, well, if you're looking for people from the entire Discord and Friends community guilty of being a Zuchi Guardian, that's what Chrissy Trot is for. So yeah, when it comes to Zuchi Guardian, he is pretty much a major Chrissy Trot. Especially I like to call out as another Chrissy Trotta, which I would never do. Even if, say, there may have been things Emma did get in a review that I will admit I may not agree with him on even up to this day, like he's been with, like how he's been with such things like the Animation, Illumination of Lorax, and some Disney sequels. Just be thankful for me that I never, ever did, nor will ever say things that go along the lines of saying he's wrong for liking or hating some things. In fact, I actually believe there is no such thing as being wrong for like or hate. You can say whatever you want about stuff, but unfortunately, you just can't stop, and there can be some individuals out there who are just, like Morgan, for example, who I'm apologizing to right now, who tend to exaggerate these unfortunate problems, which I'll get into later. And then, of course, there are a number of other things that make me and Zuchi Guardian different. Like, for example, another thing that makes me and Zuchi Guardian stand out as different people would include, well, something I'm sure all of you guys heard me point out before is that Zuchi Guardian first opened his own YouTube channel long before I did. And if that wasn't enough, well, what if I told you that he had not one, not two, but 3 other YouTube accounts open, all of which actually happened before I first opened up my YouTube channel, which include Death Flame Armada, Death Blaster X, and Flaming Ballista. And let's not also forget he did once open up a Daily Motion page, also long before I joined YouTube. Over there, he'd be known as Death Flame XL. I'm sure all those just checked out the Death Flame XL Daily Motion channel may notice that he hasn't been uploading something new in a long time. Well, to keep this long story short from my end, I guess you could say he got what he rightfully deserved. Which leads me to bringing this other reasoning up of how I'm not a Zuchi Guardian. That is, well, funny story about that. It was actually something that a middle school friend / fanboy of mine did actually once point out about me and Zuchi Guardian. And if you ask about that, Zuchi Guardian he'll tell you that for a fact that what he told me, what I'm saying here is true. That'll be, well, how he and I can both be regarding doing walking casualties barely shot. Well, let's just say another thing that makes me and Zuchi both stand out different people include the fact that, well, guilty enough on both me and Zuchi Guardian, we both have had different ideas for my review show, Casual Reviews of Barely Shot, as all you guys can kind of see. Like, for example, something I would normally do, I'm sure a lot of people may know from me to do, would be the fact that, well, yes, it is true that I mainly try to be family friendly. Which can definitely explain why, if you guys watched the last episode of Casual Reviews, I noticed that there's certain swear words that exist I just felt like censoring just for the sake of keeping it family friendly. However, that was never meant for me to say that I'm opposed to doing adult humor. I would when I feel like it, I guess guess you could say, when it comes to doing anything that's quote-unquote adult. Like, for example, if you remember when I made the last episode of Casual Reviews Barbershop was a public apology, even though I tried my best to be family friendly, there was one dirty joke I felt like tossing out uncensored. That would be, when closing off, when addressing of how the only Goombas review of Super Princess speech in a big public apology, you'll notice that there's a dirty joke I felt like tossing out there. A sexual joke. Well, that's because I just felt like at that point in time, not only would it be funny, but also it just made sense, you know? It also would have been relevant, you know? And yes, speaking of which, I will say, when the Guardian is a Guardian, he mainly does adult-oriented things. Like he's some Ralph Bakshi clone, if you know what I mean. Well, I'd be more like Walt Disney. And then, of course, regarding how Guardian and I can both be with comedy, I tend to be more relevant, you know. And yeah, when looking back at when I made the last episode of Casual Reviews of Barbershop, you'll notice that all the different jokes I felt like tossing out in the last episode of Casual Reviews of Barbershop, I just knew that not only did I have to make it all funny as I feel I should, I just knew they should all rightfully be, of course, but also clean and, more importantly, either way, relevant. And yeah, that's the thing about doing comedy in general, is that when getting into comedy in general, that's where you want to make sure that all the jokes you're like tossing out, especially when doing a review show, not only do you want to make it funny as with any other kind of comedy you do, but also you want to make sure that all that when doing your own review show, if you ever want to do comedy in your review show, then you want to make sure that all the jokes you toss out are relevant to whatever it is you're talking about. And that's pretty much of how, when tossing a certain jokes, in the last episode of Casual Reviews Barbershop, that's where you guys can kind of see that I just want to make sure that they're all not only funny, but also at the same time clean and, more importantly, either way, relevant to the subject matter. Which I will honestly say would have been constructive criticism I received from a former title card artist on the show, Richard Greenwald, aka the Physics Werewolf. So you can see why, when doing my show, however I wanted to be, that I just knew I want to make sure that all the jokes I'm tossing out are all indeed relevant, you know? And, when it comes to relevancy, that's important in comedy, especially. Which can pretty much explain why I got Tony Goldmark, aka some joke with camera, who, when tossing out certain jokes in his own reviews, especially as can be seen when reviewing theme park attractions based on other forms of media, like it's based on a movie or a TV show or stuff like that, you'll notice that it would always be often that he would make sure that the jokes he toss out are not only funny, but also at the same time can be understandable for the viewers from whatever it is he's talking about to see. But for those who don't know, yes, that's pretty much how to handle comedy, and not just, especially on Casual Reviews of Barbershop when doing it the way I want it to be. I just I want to make sure that all the jokes I toss out are not only funny, but also understandable for the viewers to take, when telling certain jokes, That's the thing about doing comedy in that shit, where Mr. Gandhi, on the other hand, he'd be more irrelevant, I guess you could say, And yeah, the funny thing about the fact that you have this middle school friend / fanboy did once point out in the past, back when I got to unite with him during my high school days, back when I was still in high school, of how that is growing up, both have different ideas for Casual Reviews. So that's where you guys can tell for a fact that when talking to Zuchigarian about me as an internet reviewer, that's where you guys can tell for a fact that Zuchigarian's behalf would have been guilty of having his own set of fantasies regarding me as an internet reviewer. For example, ever since in fact, I will honestly say this, that ever since I reviewed as a Guardian from Casual Reviews Barbershop, he's made up a number of different fantasies of his own regarding the show. Like, for example, At one point, he did believe that casual reviews website is canceled, which in fact it's not. If anything, the show's still going. He's just not involved, at least not officially. He's not. And then nowadays, when talking to him about me as an internal reviewer, when he talks to him about my review show, he's more likely going to think about a TV, which I think it's bullcrap. Because I'm sure what Azuchi Garden may have forgotten about would be, well, that back in 2016, there was this one rule I wanted to enforce called the majority rule. And considering of how there have been a number of people I met in life who really love the idea of calling my review show Casual Reviews of Bear Rimshot, that's where I just knew I've had to leave my show, leave the entire series as nothing more than just casual reviews with Bear Rimshot. Even up to this day, after I already had Azuchi Guardian fired from the show, my review show still remains as nothing more than just casual reviews of Bear Rimshot, not just limited to regardless of Azuchi Guardian's part of the team or not, but also regardless who I could gather as my editor in general either way. And yeah, that's pretty much and another thing that makes me and Azuchi Guardian hold up as different people would include the fact that, well, and how we can both be of say when my friend Dante on his behalf would go make up certain decisions that would remain in place that, we both may not agree on for their own merits. In the case of Azuchi Guardian on his behalf, when there would indeed be certain decisions for epic battles, as for example, that remain in place, he'll just do anything to disrespect certain business decisions that remain in place. For projects I get to work in life, not limited to casual reviews by Rimshot, but also, whether you guys believe it or not, epic battles as well. However, with the case of how I would handle myself when I share my own set of disagreements on how epic battles came to be. Even though there are indeed a number of ideas used for epic battles that I may not agree on based on how it came to be, I will honestly say this myself, that I would pretty much respect them as they are. Which can clearly explain why, when it comes to creating my own set of epic battles projects, especially when I create battle groups, that's where you're going to find me when understanding the creativity when I get to do my own epic battles projects like battle groups. That's where all of you guys can kindly see that there'll be a number of different things that I'd be legally complied to do, no matter how many times all of you gentlemen may protest me. And yeah, another one out of many things I'd be legally complied to do when doing my own work and my own epic battles projects would include having the need to include some Iron Pony characters whenever technically possible, while also being able to include all of your favorite Disney characters. And yeah, when understanding how I can be when I get to work on my own set of epic battles projects, there are a number of different things I'm legally complied to do, which would all indeed be another story for another day. And then, of course, another thing that make me and Azuchi Guardian different would include we both have different religious beliefs. As all you may have heard me mention in the past, that I'm Jewish, to the point that, even Mike Masek did one some years ago that Morgan Ledger did guilty enough to discriminate me for being Jewish for some reason. Did Morgan Ledger, from my understanding, did indeed make some anti-Semitic remarks about me. Why? Yeah, not gonna lie when I say it. But anyways, Azuchi Guardian, on the other hand, he ain't Jewish. He's a goy. well, Azuchi Guardian, I guess you could say, if he ever asked Azuchi Guardian of how or what his religion, he'd be what is called a druid, which can explain why. And yeah, the fact that I'm Jewish and Azuchi Guardian is not would go to prove that. Yeah, definitely have had my own bar mitzvah background in 7th grade, whereas back when Azuchi Guardian his behalf on when he was in 7th grade, never did he ever had a bar mitzvah like I did. So, yeah. And speaking about discussion regarding age, well, also worth noting, another thing that makes me and Azuchi Guardian both different would include, well, not only do we have different birthdays, including birth months, but also we were both born in different years as well. For me, my birthday would have been in March, whereas Azuchi Guardian would be in August. So if I ever felt like hosting my own birthday parties over here in New York, don't expect me to host a pool party, unless, say, if I could ever travel to such places like Florida or California to meet up with some camp friends. Different story altogether. Whereas, fortunately for Azuchi Guardian, he can host a pool party of his own if he wanted to. And yeah, when you hear me say that I can never host a pool party for my birthday, at least it'll be unlikelier for me to consider hosting a pool party. That is just sad for me to say before I love to go swimming, in all honesty. But at the very least, there'll be no problem for me to host such things like a movie party or a video game party. That I can do no problem if I ever wanted to when my birthday comes. But yeah. And, yeah, and when regarding the different years, Azuchi and I were both born in, I was born in 1996, whereas Azuchi Guardian was born in 1990. When doing the math, that's where I can tell, unfortunately for me, I sadly had to miss out the original theatrical releases for such Disney classics like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, and the original Toy Story movie, as well as Nightmare Before Christmas. Where, fortunately for Azuchi Guardian, on the other hand, back during childhood, it would be no problem for him to see such movies and such Disney classics in theaters like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, the original Toy Story movie, and The Nightmare Before Christmas, back when they all first came out in theaters, if you ever wanted to. And yeah, considering the fact of how that I was born in 1986 and Azuchi Guardian was born in 1990, that's how I can tell I would prove that not only was I sadly unable to see such movies like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, The Nightmare Before Christmas, and the original Toy Story all back when they first came out in theaters, but also at the same time, I also had to sadly, but also back when, at the time when Azuchi Guardian had his 17th birthday, that's where, unfortunately for me, I wouldn't be able to enjoy, by myself, to enjoy such movies like Schindler's List, The Godfather, or the works of Ralph Bakshi, or most Ralph Bakshi stuff, as well as Saving Private Ryan if I ever wanted to, or that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't be able to, and I would also be too young to enjoy watching such shows like South Park and Robot Chicken. As well as I wouldn't be allowed to buy myself such games like Grand Theft Auto, Tomb Raider, Metal Gear Solid, God of War, God of War, and God of War, and Assassin's Creed, and Halo. Even though guilty enough on my behalf, I will admit I did first start playing a number of teen-rated games back when I was still in third grade, because you forgot. Which most of those teen-rated games I first played back when I was still in elementary school would include a number of Star Wars games. So that's because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So that can explain why I can be guilty of being underage playing a number of Star Wars games, As well as likewise, I even started playing a lot of Super Smash Bros. Brawl back when I first bought myself a Wii, back when I was still in 5th grade. So, yeah. And let's not also forget that as if Azuchi Guardian would go date a girl who would have been the same exact age as I am right now, just in time for his high school graduation, we can tell Azuchi Guardian here would go commit the crime of pedophilia right here. Because, when you're doing the math, that's where you can clearly see for yourself that at the time when Azuchi Guardian turned 18 of all things, when you're doing the math, when doing the math, that's where you can tell at that point in time, at that point in time, I would have been only 12 years old. Not only that, but also at the same time, at the time when Azuchi Guardian finally got to turn 21, not only would he on his behalf be committing the crime pedophilia once again if he were to say date a girl who is the same exact age as I am, back when Azuchi Guardian was still 21. For up to that point in time when doing my mathematics, that's where you can see for a fact that that's where you can clearly see for a fact that that at the time when he turned 21, I would have been, if I did the math correctly, only 15 years old. So having an 18-year-old boy date a 12-year-old girl, or have a 21-year-old boy date a 15-year-old girl, no good. Even one teacher I had back in high school named Mr. Coffee can tell you for a fact that he would hate it if such events occurred to my former editor. For like I said before, my former editor's Guardian is technically 6 years older than me, which can also explain the same exact reason why if I ever felt like drinking any alcohol at the time, during that same exact time period, when Azuchi Guardian would have been 21 at that point in time, just in time for when he's able to enjoy drinking alcohol for himself, I would have been too young to drink alcohol. Which really doesn't bother me for, regardless how old I get in life, the worst thing all the guys will see me drink is nothing but virgin. So the next time you go spend time with me at a local party, don't expect me to drink things like beer, wine, or whiskey anytime soon. Whereas drinks like water, juice, milk, and soda would be no problem for me, whatever. I feel like it, even though being someone who has diabetes, as I mentioned before, I just knew how to keep all my drinks sugar-free. Like water, Crystal Light, Diet Soda, Diet Snapple, that kind of stuff, you know what I'm talking about. Whereas sweetening such things like coffee, tea, oatmeal, or seltzer water goes, I would likely do colored packets, you know? But, yeah, whatchamacallit, oh yes, right. And another thing that makes Izuchigo and I both different is how we can both be without sexuality. Now, I'm sure all of you may have heard me mention loudly and clearly that I'm straight. So did Izuchi Guardian up to the point that he can be guilty of committing the crime of homophobia. However, even though I'm not afraid to admit about myself that I'm so proud to be straight, I don't ever see myself doing that as others like I would spread homophobia. I mean, if anything, I'm just doing, when it comes to the fact that I choose to be straight, I'm just doing nothing more than just whatever it is I feel like is right for me, you know? And yeah, that is the reality of how I can be with my sexuality in a nutshell, that when it comes to the fact that I'm straight, I'm just doing nothing more than just whatever I feel is right for me. So never do I have anything against people who are gay, so please don't think of me as if I were homophobic. That means you, Steph Felton, in case if you're watching this. Nothing against gay people at all, personally. Just not gay, personally, is a gay. Is why I prefer to be straight, you know? Before I did once have a girlfriend in the past, I will say. And yeah, and another thing that makes me and Izuchi Guardian both different people would include the fact that, well, we're basically how we handle ourselves when doing work on projects for the sake of nostalgia. When understanding how it's going to be when he does that kind of stuff, usually he would see that as an excuse for others. With the case for me personally, never would I ever consider doing it as a means to hurt others. If anything, when it comes to the fact that I always work on projects that can be done for the sake of nostalgia, as they say, I just have to know my limits, you know? Which can explain why, when being honest, how I can be a songwriter. All of you who know me for my love for music would often hear me say that I'm very good at arranging and I suck at composing. Well, that's because when you're arranging a particular song, you're clearly rewriting music that already exists for certain instruments to play. Whereas when you're composing a particular song, you're writing something completely original, which I cannot do. So yeah, that is the reality of how I can be as a songwriter in a nutshell. I'd more likely do arranging more so than I ever can with composing, because when it comes to arranging, it's just easy for me to do, but that's just me, but yeah. And when it comes to those times where I may feel like telling certain jokes that may involve use of more religious likeness, that's where you guys can tell I just gotta know my limits. In this case, I would get to use what is called archive footage, which is pretty much what happens when you have Pixar, of how you got Pixar there. But yeah, we did get to bring back Paul Newman to reprise as well as Doc Hudson in Cars 3. As well as, likewise, when you have Pixar do the same thing again when they brought back Don Rickles to reprise as well as Mr. Potato Head in Toy Story 4 in a nutshell. As well as, likewise, when you have the folks at Disney and Lucasfilm consider using the likeness of Peter Cushing to recreate a CGI version of his likeness for the character of Grand Moff Tarkin. As well as, likewise, when Disney did so once when they felt like using James Taylor's likeness when introducing Fantasia 2000, starting off with something number 5, you know? That's how I can tell that there is a way of how I can get away in being able to use Morgan's likeness in casual use. But I'm sure whenever I feel like it, especially when saying there's a certain, especially if I feel like using his likeness more for some joke I wanted to tell that I feel would be funny. Well, despite what I know what Morgan says. And believe me when I say to people, yes, I know Morgan did say that he doesn't want to collaborate with me, but still, you know. When it comes to using clips from his videos that may involve his likeness, I just, well, has to know my limits while still figuring out great ideas, certain jokes I want to tell I feel would be funny to tell, you know? But it is what it is. And, yeah. And you can tell that when I do things like songwriting, filmmaking, game designing, I would most likely do it all as nothing more than a hobby. And I'm not even going to lie when I say this. Though being honest with what I would do when I'm over here on YouTube, I see filmmaking and game designing as a hobby, as nothing more than just a hobby, you know? Well, especially since I can tell you all for a fact that back when I was in high school, I was indeed taught not to plagiarize. So, yeah. And, as for how I've been given the idea of Morgan Ledger will be guilty of the crime of reckless book burning, or as some of you heard me say that he's been a Nazi, well, I did see Morgan once say that his running statistics, that makes him a Nazi, but also claim made him somebody who just committed the crime of book burning either way, which I hate, you know? Especially being as an aspiring historian, I guess you could say about me. But yeah, anyways, the problem I would have with what Morgan once said of statistics, well, I can understand, again, I can understand you just want to refrain from repeating the same bad mistakes you made in the past. But unfortunately, no matter how many times you may stray away from his guardian, in general, that still doesn't change the fact that a number of things actually happened in life because of him. In fact, I'm not even going to lie about myself when I say this, that a number of things have happened to me because of him. Like, for example, one event occurred that I would often bring up in my update vlogs, I would often say is, an event that occurred because of him would include that time back in Halloween 2006, back during the Halloween season in 2016, when his future guardian can be seen trying to hide me to so badly that I would not only make mixtape to break ties with me and send death threats to me at that point in time, but also it led a number of people I met on social media in the past. Well, let's just say, to keep this long story short, at that time when as you guys were all for little Hymentude really did indeed change my life on social media forever. But it all happened for the worse, causing more and more people to lose respect for me because of how did I lose my friendship with Hymentude. You know, it's because of your guardian who was belittling Hymentude. Well, you have to keep in mind, this was back when Mike Mixie and Hymentude were both still good friends, even consistently working together on this podcast that we once do called Cinema Royale. You know what I'm talking about, but yeah. And as such events occur at that point in time, well, consider how all that as was what is going to would affect done taking on using my approach. However, somehow didn't. That's where I had to put such a stressful creative life to the point that, I would not only want to see regularly bad blood sugar because of that, but also it's somewhat play part alongside bad school life as a factor in why I would ever want to think about committing suicide in the first place. Yeah, I can get stressed in life, so please be careful with me. I beg you all. But yeah. However, let's not also forget that there have been a number of other things that occurred because of him. Like, for example, there would be not one, but two really good friends I've had in my life, who were impacted by Zuzu Guardian as well. Like, for example, there'd be this friend from high school I still talk to via video chat named Nicholas Centric Banana Gamer 5, who already did quit liking quitting and brony things, so that you gotta be a major sex offender over him doing that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's also another thing that makes YouTube communities kind of different people is concerned. We can both be with Nicholas Centric Banana Gamer 5, Even Nick can tell you that for a fact. So you guys can clearly see why Nick listened to Banana Gamer 105 didn't feel like unsubscribing. Not just Morgan Ledger, but also Hamilton and Mike Nixon as well. But anyways, and then of course, got my friend Dante DeJesus, who when talking to this childhood friend from doing JCC programs in the past, on how epic battles is being remembered nowadays. Let's just say it is now being remembered as another Knives Out. Oh, when you guys hear me say that, I don't just mean it was a success. But either way, let's just say you can ask a number of friends I've had in life, or just a number of people for that matter, who are so familiar with my work in Epic Battles, and how they feel about what Azuchi Guardian has put me and Nick through regarding such things like My Little Pony characters popping up in crossovers. And that's where those particular individuals who are so familiar with my work at Epic Battles can tell you the fact of how angry they are with Azuchi Guardian, with what he put me up to the point that Azuchi Guardian's behalf would be in for mockery. That is also another thing that occurred because Azuchi Guardian would be, well, there's been this one person and I both personally know, in fact, he'd be this one person I first met through Azuchi Guardian, whether guys all believe it or not, Wheatley, who, I guess you could say, let's just say, when getting to know your own, he's definitely what I can usually call out as a major Chris Chan, Pretty much just gives critics such a bad name. And, when it comes to your Wheatley, he is someone who I can usually compare to Chris Chan in a nutshell, Just can't explain why as my friend Dante, did indeed once consider closing off the entire battle saga. With Azuchi Guardian being killed off, that's where we got Wheatley who would go all Chris Chan on him. So in fact, we got Wheatley who would not go Chris Chan on me, but also a number of friends I've had in life, as well as Animat, as well as Mike Nixon, as well as Morgan Ledger, as well as Mr. Coda and Jaime too. Not sure if all those individuals watching this know what I'm talking about, but yeah, when it comes to Wheatley, just watch out for him, He's just bad news, I must say, He's just what I often call out as a nutjob, Always loving to start a drama over little things, But, yeah. Hope y'all can understand how I feel about Morgan now. And no, Harry Henry, it's not the hate on Azuchi Guardian that's the problem. For I can understand the hate on Azuchi Guardian on its own. But unfortunately, with the case of Morgan Ledger, he had to be one of those people who exist who had to take himself way too far in how he feels by exaggerating on how he feels. And at that point, I will honestly say, he had to be one of those people who exist, who did just have to prove Azuchi Guardian. Right, what a major troll he is. Right up there alongside Wheatley, which you should not be. Trust me. Don't be, if there's something that bugs you about Azuchi Guardian, you can hate on him all you want, just don't be another Wheatley. I beg you all. And, yeah. Which would indeed be the same exact problems that, Yoshi Play would have back when he did this video talking about Anima 2 years ago, if you know what I'm talking about. And this wraps up today's special vlog. Well, to all those Party Time and Dakota friends can be watching this, as well as those good friends of Morgan, I hope all of you guys can forgive me and understand how I feel about it. And Jaime Toon, James, Stefan, if you're both watching this, I hope I can get back to supporting you guys on Patreon again. when I have the money to do so. Until then, I thank you all for watching. And I'll see you all in the next upload.